The dust rose like a haze of crimson fire as Zara Valentine stared at the cracked, barren ground of her newly purchased plot, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. The year was 1876, and in the unforgiving plains of western Nebraska, dreams died faster than delicate seedlings under the scorching sun. At 22, she had spent her entire life savings on this parcel of land, drawn by the Homestead Act's promise and her own relentless vision of green things growing where nothing but sagebrush and desperation seemed to thrive. "You're looking at it wrong, Miss Valentine," said the shopkeeper, Horace Daly, as he delivered her meager supplies. "This here's cattle country, always has been, always will be. Trying to grow anything beyond the basics is pure foolishness." Zara brushed a strand of auburn hair from her face, her green eyes flashing with determination. "Mr. Daly, I've read extensively about dry farming techniques. I believe with proper care and understanding of the soil, I can make things grow here." Horace snorted, tipping his hat back. "Books, is it? Well, books won't change this climate, madam. We get 14 inches of rainfall in a good year. 14. That new plot of yours needs 30 just to consider waking up." "Then I'll find ways to make 14 inches work," she replied, her chin lifting slightly. News traveled fast in Cottonwood Springs. By sundown, everyone had heard about the stubborn Easterner with her ridiculous gardening notions. The daughter of a Massachusetts professor had come west with trunks full of books and seed packets instead of practical skills. They called her hopeless, though rarely to her face. Behind her back, the nickname Garden Girl spread through town with the efficiency of wildfire. Zara's one-room cabin sat on the edge of her 20 acres, a humble structure she'd hired local men to build before her arrival. Inside, she arranged her books carefully on hand, made shelves volumes on irrigation, plant hardiness, soil composition, and the experiences of farmers in similarly challenging environments. Her father's botany texts occupied a place of honor. He'd taught her to believe in scientific approaches to seemingly impossible problems before consumption took him 2 years earlier. As darkness fell that evening, Zara lit her lamp and opened her journal, sketching out garden plots and irrigation plans. The sound of approaching hoofbeats disrupted her concentration. Visitors were rare enough to be concerning at this hour. Grabbing her father's old revolver from beneath her pillow, Zara moved cautiously to the window. A tall silhouette on horseback approached her cabin, moonlight glinting off the brim of his hat. She gripped the gun tighter, though she'd never fired it outside of 3 hasty lessons from her father, years ago. A knock sounded at her door. "Who's there?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "Griffin Blackett, madam, foreman from the Triple R Ranch north of your property. Saw your light burning and thought I'd check that all was well." Zara hesitated, then tucked the revolver into the pocket of her skirt before opening the door just wide enough to see the visitor. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with features chiseled by sun and wind. Though likely only in his late 20s, his eyes carried the weathered wisdom of a man who had seen far more than his years would suggest. His dark hair curled slightly beneath his hat, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. "It's rather late for social calls, Mr. Blackett," she said. The man's eyes flickered to the outline of the revolver in her pocket, and a hint of respect crossed his features. "Not a social call, Miss Valentine. We had reports of rustlers in these parts last week. When I saw a light where there shouldn't be one, thought I'd investigate. I've lived here for 3 days, Mr. Blackett. Surely the news of my arrival has reached even the Triple R by now." A slight smile tugged at his lips. "It has, though the descriptions didn't do you justice." She fought back a blush, maintaining her businesslike demeanor. "Well, as you can see, there are no rustlers here. Just a woman trying to get some work done before bed." His gaze moved past her to the table, where her books and garden plans lay open. "Ranchers around these parts generally don't take kindly to newcomers who don't understand the territory, especially ones with unusual ideas." "Is that a threat, Mr. Blackett?" He seemed genuinely surprised by her question. "No, madam, an observation, and perhaps a warning that life out here isn't like back east. Nature has its own ideas about what belongs and what doesn't." "Then nature and I will have to come to an understanding," she replied evenly. Griffin Blackett studied her for a long moment, then nodded as if coming to a decision. I reckon you'll need help getting that well dug deeper if you're planning on growing anything more substantial than despair. The one they put in for you barely hits the water table. Zara's surprise must have shown on her face, because he continued. I helped survey this land back when old man Peterson owned it. Know every ridge and hollow for miles. That well needs to go down another 15 feet minimum to be reliable. Are you offering assistance, Mr. Blackett? Could be. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. Though I'm curious what a lady from Massachusetts knows about growing things in desert conditions. I guess you'll have to wait and see, she replied, unwilling to reveal her doubts to this stranger. Good night, Mr. Blackett. After he rode away, Zara returned to her plans, but found her thoughts drifting to the unexpected encounter. Griffin Blackett didn't seem to share the town's immediate dismissal of her dreams, which was interesting. But she had learned long ago not to depend on others' goodwill. The next morning arrived with a merciless sun already climbing the sky. Zara set to work hauling water from her shallow well to the small plot she'd cleared near the cabin. The labor was backbreaking, and by midday she had managed to dampen only a fraction of the area she'd hoped to prepare. Sweat drenched her work dress, and her hands were already developing blisters. The sound of wagon wheels drew her attention. A team of horses pulled into view, driven by Griffin Blackett. Behind him rode two younger men. Miss Valentine, he called, tipping his hat. Thought you might make use of some proper tools. She approached cautiously, wiping her hands on her apron. The wagon contained shovels, picks, a hand plow, and several large barrels. This is mighty generous, Mr. Blackett, but I'm not in the habit of accepting charity. Griffin jumped down from the wagon. Not charity, a loan. And these are my brothers, George and Gabriel. They've agreed to help with that well situation I mentioned. The younger Blackett brothers tipped their hats, looking nearly as weathered as their older sibling, despite being barely out of their teens. I can't pay much, Zara admitted reluctantly. Wasn't asking for payment, Griffin replied, but I hear you brought Eastern seeds with you. Might be interested in trading labor for some of those. If there are varieties we can't get out here. She studied him suspiciously. Why would a cattle rancher want garden seeds? A shadow passed briefly over his face. My mother kept a garden before she passed. Haven't had much luck continuing it myself, but I'd like to try again. The simple honesty in his voice convinced her. Very well. A trade then. For the remainder of the day, the Blackett brothers tackled the well, while Zara continued preparing her garden plot. Occasionally, she would catch Griffin watching her work, a curious expression on his face. When he approached to offer suggestions on how to better retain moisture in the soil, she was surprised by his knowledge. Didn't take you for a gardening man, Mr. Blackett. He shrugged, kneeling to demonstrate how to create a basin around where she planned to plant. My pa brought us out here when I was 12. Ma insisted on trying to grow something besides cattle feed. I helped her figure out ways to make it work. She was stubborn about it. Reminds me a bit of you. By sunset, the well had been deepened considerably. The garden plot was properly prepared with moisture-retaining berms, and Zara had a newfound respect for the taciturn foreman and his brothers. As they prepared to leave, Griffin handed her a small burlap sack. Cow manure, aged and dried, best fertilizer you'll find out here. Zara laughed despite herself. Most women receive flowers. I get a bag of manure. The corner of Griffin's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. Flowers die, Miss Valentine, but this'll help things grow. Thank you for everything today. He nodded, then hesitated. People in town, they don't mean harm when they call you hopeless. They've just seen too many dreams shrivel up in this climate. And what do you think, Mr. Blackett? Am I hopeless? His eyes met hers directly. I think hope is the only thing worth having out here. Everything else can be taken by drought or storm or sickness. But hope? He glanced at her prepared garden plot. That's something no one can take unless you give it up. With that, he and his brothers departed, leaving Zara to ponder the unexpected alliance she seemed to have formed. Over the next 2 weeks, Zara worked from dawn until dusk. The well now provided adequate water, though hauling it remained exhausting work. She planted her first experimental beds with drought-resistant varieties, beans, squash, root vegetables, and herbs that might stand a chance against the harsh conditions. Griffin appeared every few days, sometimes bringing his brothers, sometimes alone. He helped rig a simple windmill to ease the water hauling and showed her how to create shade covers for the most delicate seedlings. Their conversations grew longer, ranging from practical farming techniques to books they had read to stories of their vastly different upbringings. Meanwhile, the townsfolk's attitude toward Zara remained dismissive, though less openly hostile as they observed her determined efforts. Horace Daly begrudgingly admitted she was tougher than she looked, which Zara gathered was high praise from the cantankerous shopkeeper. One evening, as Griffin prepared to leave after helping install a water barrel system, he paused. "There's a social at the town hall Saturday night. Music, dancing, food. Whole county turns out for it." Zara looked up from where she was inspecting her first bean sprouts. "Are you inviting me, Mr. Blackett?" "Griffin," he corrected. "And yes, I suppose I am." "Then yes, Griffin, I accept." The social proved to be both wonderful and terrible. Wonderful because Griffin was an excellent dancer and conversationalist. Terrible because Zara quickly realized she was the subject of significant gossip. She overheard snippets as she moved through the crowded hall. Garden girl, hopeless case, and has poor Blackett bewitched. During a break in the dancing, while Griffin fetched them punch, Zara found herself cornered by Harriet Simmons, the banker's wife, an unofficial social arbiter of Cottonwood Springs. "Miss Valentine, I feel it's my duty to inform you that you're making quite a spectacle," Mrs. Simmons said sweetly, her eyes cold. "Griffin Blackett is considered quite a catch in this county. His family's ranch is one of the most prosperous. He could have his pick of suitable young ladies." "And I'm unsuitable because I want to grow a garden?" Zara asked, keeping her voice level. "You're unsuitable because you refuse to adapt to our ways," Mrs. Simmons replied. "This isn't Massachusetts, dear. Women here understand their place." "And what place is that exactly?" Zara felt her temper rising. "Supporting their husbands' endeavors, not chasing impossible fancies. Your garden will fail, just as surely as winter follows autumn. Everyone knows it but you and perhaps Griffin, who's always had a soft spot for lost causes." Zara was saved from replying by Griffin's return. He must have sensed the tension, because he smoothly guided Zara away, after exchanging pleasantries with Mrs. Simmons. "Don't let Harriet bother you," he murmured. "She tried to match me with her niece last year. Still holds a grudge that I declined." "Is that what I am to you?" Zara asked suddenly. "A lost cause? A hopeless case you feel sorry for?" Griffin's expression grew serious. "Walk with me." They stepped outside into the cool night air, moving away from the lantern-lit hall. The stars blazed overhead in a way Zara had never seen back east, a brilliant canopy stretching from horizon to horizon. "My father brought us here when the Triple R was nothing but a claim and a dream," Griffin said, after they had walked in silence for a moment. "Most folks thought he was crazy good Pennsylvania farmland traded for this harsh country. First winter, we nearly starved. Second year, drought killed half our stock. Third year, rustlers took most of what was left." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "Everyone said he was hopeless too, but he and my mother refused to give up. They adapted, learned from the land instead of fighting it. By the time they both passed Pa 5 years ago, Ma 3 the Triple R was one of the most successful operations in the territory." Griffin took her hands in his. "I don't think you're hopeless, Zara. I think you're brave and stubborn, and exactly what this place needs, someone who sees possibilities instead of limitations." Before she could respond, a shout came from the direction of the hall, followed by alarmed cries. They hurried back to find several men on horseback circling the building, firing pistols into the air. Panic erupted as people scattered. "Rollins' gang," Griffin muttered, pushing Zara behind him protectively. "Stay here." He strode forward to where the sheriff and several other men were confronting the riders. "We're just looking for a good time, boys," called a scarred man, who appeared to be the leader. "Heard there was a party and we weren't invited. That ain't neighborly." "You're not welcome here, Rollins," the sheriff replied. "You and your men need to move on." The tension crackled in the air. Zara could see Griffin standing tall beside the sheriff, hand hovering near his holster. Rollins spotted her watching from the shadows. "Well, well, who's the pretty new face?" Griffin shifted slightly, blocking Rollins' view. "She's none of your concern." Everything in this county is my concern, Rollins sneered, especially pretty things that belong to Blackett's. I don't belong to anyone, Zara said clearly, stepping forward despite Griffin's warning glance. Rollins grinned, revealing a gold tooth. A spirited one. I like that. Leave, Rollins, the sheriff repeated. Or this time, you're going to jail instead of just getting run off. For a tense moment, it seemed violence was inevitable. Then Rollins laughed, wheeling his horse around. Another time, then. Madam, he tipped his hat mockingly toward Zara. I'll be seeing you. As the gang rode away, the festive mood was shattered. People began heading home, casting nervous glances into the darkness. Griffin insisted on escorting Zara back to her cabin. The Rollins gang controls the territory south of here, he explained as they rode. Rustlers mostly, though they've been known to rob stagecoaches too. Sheriff can't prove enough to arrest them, and they're too many for a straightforward fight. And that man seemed to have a particular dislike for you, Zara observed. Griffin's jaw tightened. I caught his brother stealing Triple R cattle 2 years back. There was a fight. His brother didn't survive it. When they reached her cabin, Griffin checked inside before allowing her to enter. I don't like that Rollins saw you. He might think harassing you would be a way to get to me. I can take care of myself, Zara insisted, though the encounter had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Griffin's expression softened. I know you can, but I'd still feel better keeping an eye on things for a while. I appreciate the concern, but don't let it interfere with your work. He smiled slightly. My work includes looking after this whole territory, Miss Valentine, or at least the parts of it I care about. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Good night, Griffin. Good night, Zara. Lock your door. I'll be back tomorrow. True to his word, Griffin appeared the next afternoon. And the next. Each visit brought new assistance with her garden project, an irrigation ditch here, a windbreak there. He began bringing seedlings from the Triple R's small kitchen garden, varieties his mother had successfully cultivated in similar conditions. As May turned to June, green shoots emerged from the carefully prepared soil. Each new sprout felt like a personal victory to Zara, evidence that her hopeless dream might not be so impossible after all. The garden expanded as her confidence grew, with Griffin's steady encouragement bolstering her determination. Their relationship deepened alongside the growing plants. Griffin began staying for dinner, sharing stories of his childhood and his dreams for expanding the Triple R. Zara told him about her father's scientific work, her mother's early death, and her own determination to prove that knowledge combined with perseverance could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. One evening, as they sat on her small porch watching the sunset paint the plains in fiery hues, Griffin turned to her with unusual seriousness. I've been meaning to ask you something, he began. The Triple R is doing well enough now that I've been thinking about the future. My future. Zara's heart quickened, but she kept her voice steady. Oh? There's a section of the ranch, about half a mile from the main house, with good water access and shelter from the north winds. Been thinking it might be a perfect spot for a bigger garden. Maybe an orchard too, with the right hardy stock. That sounds lovely, she said carefully. Thing is, he continued, his eyes intent on hers, I don't have your knowledge or your way with plants, and it seems to me that together we might create something neither of us could manage alone. Zara found herself holding her breath. Griffin Blackett, are you proposing a gardening partnership or something more? A smile broke across his face, transforming his usually serious features. Both, Zara Valentine. Definitely both. Before she could respond, the distant sound of galloping hooves interrupted the moment. Griffin was on his feet instantly, hand moving to his gun. 4 riders approached at speed, and even in the fading light, Zara recognized Rollins at their head. Griffin positioned himself in front of her as they thundered to a stop before the cabin. Evening, Blackett, Rollins called. Just passing through and thought we'd pay our respects to the lady. You're trespassing, Rollins, Griffin replied, his voice hard. Public road runs right past here, Rollins countered with a smirk. We're just being neighborly. His gaze shifted to Zara. Heard you're trying to grow things in this god-forsaken dirt. How's that working out for you, garden girl? Zara stepped forward, ignoring Griffin's attempt to keep her behind him. Better than expected, Mr. Rollins. Would you care to see? Her calm response seemed to surprise the outlaw. He studied her for a moment, then barked a laugh. Maybe next time. Tonight we're just delivering a message. What message? Griffin demanded. Sheriff ran off 2 of my boys yesterday. Claimed they were rustling from the Wilson spread. Rollins' expression hardened. I don't appreciate my men being harassed. If they weren't stealing, they had nothing to worry about, Griffin replied evenly. Rollins leaned forward in his saddle. Here's the message. Back the sheriff off, or things are going to get unpleasant. Starting with this pretty little garden experiment. That's not how things work here, Rollins, Griffin said. You want the sheriff to leave your men alone? Tell them to stop stealing. Rollins spat on the ground. You always were too righteous for your own good, Blackett, just like your pa. He straightened, addressing Zara directly. You picked the wrong man to hitch your wagon to, miss. Blacketts don't bend, and out here, those who don't bend eventually break. With that ominous warning, Rollins and his men wheeled their horses around and galloped away into the gathering darkness. Griffin turned to Zara, his expression grave. I need to get you somewhere safe. Pack what you need. You'll stay at the Triple R tonight. I'm not abandoning my home because of threats, she protested. It's not abandoning, it's being sensible, he insisted. Rollins doesn't make idle threats. Once he's focused on a target, he follows through. Then I'll face that when it comes, Zara said firmly. I didn't survive everything else to run at the first sign of trouble. Griffin ran a hand through his hair in frustration. This isn't about courage, Zara. It's about not taking unnecessary risks. Their argument continued as night fully descended, neither willing to yield. Finally, Griffin sighed heavily. Fine. If you won't come to the Triple R, I'll stay here. That's not necessary. It is, he interrupted. And it's not negotiable. I'll sleep on the porch. Despite her protests, Griffin was immovable on this point. Zara finally relented, providing him with blankets for his makeshift bed on the porch. As she prepared for bed inside, Zara reflected on the interrupted conversation from earlier. Griffin had all but proposed marriage, combining their dreams of ranch life and gardening. The thought filled her with both joy and trepidation. Could she truly build a life here? With this man who seemed to understand her determination better than anyone she'd ever known. She was still pondering this question when a crash from outside jolted her from her thoughts. Griffin's shout followed immediately. Zara! Fire! She rushed outside to find Griffin battling flames that had erupted along one side of her garden. Burning arrows had been shot into the dry grass surrounding the cultivated area. Working together frantically, they managed to contain the fire before it consumed the entire garden, though nearly a quarter of her carefully tended plants were destroyed. In the distance, the sound of retreating horses told them who was responsible. By morning, the damage was painfully evident. Weeks of work had been undone in minutes. Zara knelt beside the charred remains of her bean plants, fighting back tears of anger and frustration. Griffin squatted beside her. I'm sorry, Zara. This is my fault. No, she said firmly. This is Rollins' fault, not yours. If you weren't associated with me... Stop, she interrupted. I make my own choices, Griffin Blackett. I chose to come here. I chose to try making something grow in this difficult place. And I chose to care for you. She met his gaze directly. None of those choices were mistakes. He reached out, gently brushing a smudge of ash from her cheek. You're the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Zara looked back at the damaged garden. We can replant. It's not too late in the season. Griffin's expression changed, determination replacing regret. Yes, we will. But first, this situation with Rollins needs to end. What are you planning? I'm going to talk to the sheriff, then gather some of the other ranchers. Rollins has been a menace for too long. It's time this community stood together against him. Over the next week, Griffin was often absent, riding between ranches and organizing a response to Rollins' escalating threats. Reports came in of cattle stolen, water holes poisoned, and isolated homesteads harassed. The county was reaching a breaking point. Meanwhile, Zara focused on rebuilding her garden. To her surprise, several town women appeared one morning to help, led by none other than Harriet Simmons. Don't misunderstand, Mrs. Simmons said primly as they worked. I still think this garden is a foolish endeavor in this climate, but no one has the right to destroy another person's hard work. Thank you, Zara replied, genuinely touched by the unexpected support. "Besides," Mrs. Simmons continued, "it appears you'll be a Blackett soon enough, and in this county, we stand by our own." Word had apparently spread about Griffin's almost proposal. Zara didn't correct the assumption. In truth, she hoped it would become reality once the current crisis passed. The confrontation with Rollins came sooner than expected. Griffin arrived at Zara's cabin one afternoon, his expression grim. "Rollins and his men raided the Wilson place last night, took 20 head of cattle and burned their barn. Mr. Wilson was injured trying to stop them." "That's terrible," Zara gasped. Sheriffs formed a posse. "We're riding out at dawn." Griffin's eyes held hers steadily. "I want you to stay at the Triple R while we're gone. My brother's wife will look after you." This time, Zara didn't argue. The escalation to physical violence changed the calculation of risk. "How long will you be gone?" she asked. "Hard to say. Rollins has a hideout somewhere in the Badlands south of here. Could be a few days, maybe longer." That night, they sat together on her porch swing, the weight of tomorrow's danger hanging between them. Fireflies blinked in the darkness, and the scent of her recovering garden drifted on the gentle breeze. "There's something I need to say before I go," Griffin said finally, taking her hands in his. In case. "Don't," Zara whispered. "Don't talk as if you might not come back." "I have to." His voice was gentle but firm. "Zara Valentine, from the moment I saw you standing in this yard, determined to make something beautiful grow where everyone else saw only barren ground, I knew you were special. You reminded me that hope isn't foolish, it's essential." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object that glinted in the moonlight. A ring, simple but elegant, with a small pearl set between two tiny emeralds. "This was my mother's," he explained. "Pa gave it to her when they decided to stake everything on a dream out here. I can't think of anyone who deserves to wear it more than you." Tears filled Zara's eyes as he continued. "I'm asking you properly now. Will you marry me, Zara? Will you build a life with me, gardens and cattle and whatever else we dream up together?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, Griffin Blackett, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that held both passion and promise. When they finally parted, Griffin pressed his forehead against hers. "When I get back," he whispered, "we'll start planning that orchard." Dawn came too quickly. Griffin departed with the sheriff's posse, 15 determined men riding south toward the Badlands. Zara moved temporarily to the Triple R, where Griffin's sister-in-law, Catherine, welcomed her warmly. Days passed with agonizing slowness. Zara threw herself into helping around the ranch and getting to know the family she would soon join. Catherine proved to be a knowledgeable gardener herself, and together they expanded the small kitchen garden while discussing plans for the larger project Griffin had proposed. On the 5th day, a rider appeared on the horizon. Catherine spotted him first, dropping the basket of beans they'd been harvesting. "Someone's coming! Fast!" They hurried to the main house, where George Blackett was already mounting his horse to intercept the messenger. By the time Zara reached the porch, George was galloping back, the rider beside him. "It's over," George called as they approached. They found Rollins' hideout. There was a fight. Zara's heart seemed to stop. "Griffin?" "Wounded but alive," George answered quickly. "They're bringing him and the others back now. Should be here by nightfall." The hours that followed were the longest of Zara's life. She helped Catherine prepare the house for the wounded, setting up beds and gathering medical supplies. The local doctor arrived mid-afternoon, having received word of the returning posse. It was well past sunset when the procession of riders finally appeared. 3 wagons carried the wounded, while the remaining men rode alongside, exhausted but victorious. Zara rushed out, searching frantically for Griffin. She found him in the second wagon, pale and drawn, with a bandage wrapped around his left shoulder. Despite the doctor's protests, he insisted on walking into the house with Zara's support. "Rollins?" she asked quietly as they made their slow way up the porch steps. "Dead," Griffin answered grimly, along with 4 of his men. The rest surrendered. "It's over, Zara. Truly over." Once inside, Griffin submitted to the doctor's examination. The bullet had passed through his shoulder without hitting any vital structures, but the blood loss and exhaustion had taken their toll. He would need time to recover. As summer progressed into fall, Healing came for both Griffin and the community. The remaining Rawlins gang members were transported to the territorial prison, the stolen cattle recovered, and a sense of security returned to the county. Griffin's wound healed cleanly, though he would always carry a scar as a reminder. Zara's garden thrived beyond anyone's expectations. The techniques she'd researched, combined with Griffin's practical knowledge of the local conditions, produced a bounty that astounded even the most skeptical townsfolk. When she shared her harvest with families who had suffered during the Rawlins raids, perceptions began to shift. The nickname Garden Girl transformed from mockery to something approaching respect. Their wedding took place in late September, with the entire county in attendance. Even Harriet Simmons admitted that Zara's bridal bouquet of locally grown flowers was quite impressive under the circumstances. After the celebration, Griffin took Zara to the spot he had described months earlier, the sheltered corner of the Triple R, where they would build their home and expanded gardens. Workers had already begun construction on a sturdy two-story house, designed with both comfort and practicality in mind. "What do you think?" Griffin asked, his arm around her waist as they surveyed the site. "Will it do for our dreams?" Zara turned to face him, joy making her voice tremble slightly. "It's perfect. More than I ever imagined when I came west." "I've been thinking," Griffin said, leading her to where several young trees were already planted in careful rows. "These are just the beginning. I sent for hardy apple, plum, and cherry varieties from nurseries that specialize in difficult climates. The man I spoke with thinks they'll have a good chance here with proper care." Zara's eyes widened as she realized the scope of what he'd planned. "An actual orchard? Griffin, that's hopeless?" he teased gently. She laughed, shaking her head. "No, that's our future, and there's nothing hopeless about it." As winter descended on the plains, Zara and Griffin settled into their temporary quarters at the main ranch house while their own home was completed. The garden lay dormant under a protective layer of mulch, waiting for spring's return, while Zara pored over seed catalogs and agricultural journals, planning next year's expanded efforts. Word of their success spread beyond the county. A professor from the Territorial College visited to document Zara's techniques, promising to include her methods in forthcoming publications on drought-resistant farming. Griffin expanded the Triple R's operations to include experimental crops alongside the traditional cattle business, creating a more resilient and diversified ranch. By spring of 1877, their new home was ready for occupation. They moved in as the first green shoots emerged in Zara's original garden and the newly prepared beds surrounding their house. The young orchard trees showed promising buds, and the irrigation system Griffin had designed during the winter was ready for the coming growing season. On their first evening in their new home, they stood together on the wide porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Do you ever miss Massachusetts?" Griffin asked, his arms encircling her from behind. Zara considered the question seriously. "I miss my father and certain comforts and conveniences, but no, I don't miss the place itself." She turned in his arms to face him. "This is where I belong now, where we belong. Even with all its hardships?" "Especially with all its hardships," she replied firmly. "They've shown us what we're capable of together." Griffin kissed her then, a kiss full of promise for their shared future. When they parted, he smiled down at her. "I have something to show you." He led her to a small structure behind their house that she had assumed was a storage shed. Inside, she found a compact greenhouse, constructed from salvage window frames and carefully sealed against the elements. "For starting seedlings early," Griffin explained, "and perhaps growing a few things that wouldn't survive outside. Your father's botanical books gave me the idea." Tears of joy welled in Zara's eyes as she took in this tangible proof of how thoroughly their dreams had intertwined. "It's perfect, thank you." "No," he said softly. "Thank you for being stubborn enough to believe this was possible when everyone said it was hopeless." 5 years later, 1882. The Triple R's gardens and orchards had become something of a local wonder. Visitors from as far as Denver sometimes made the journey to see how the Blacketts had transformed the challenging landscape into productive growing areas. Zara's experimental techniques had been published in agricultural journals, and Griffin's innovative ranch management practices had made the Triple R one of the most prosperous operations in the territory. Their family had grown as well. 3-year-old James toddled among the garden rows, his father's dark hair and his mother's determined green eyes making him a perfect blend of his parents. 1-year-old Elizabeth usually watched from a blanket nearby, already showing signs of her mother's fascination with growing things. On this particular autumn day, Zara supervised the apple harvest, while Griffin oversaw the final cattle roundup before winter. James helped by carrying the smallest apples to the sorting table, his face serious with concentration. Harriet Simmons, now a regular visitor and unlikely friend, sorted apples alongside Zara. "I still can't quite believe what you've accomplished here," she admitted. "When you first arrived, I was certain you'd either give up or starve within a year." Zara laughed, adjusting her hat against the afternoon sun. "I remember. You weren't exactly subtle about your opinions." "Well, I've never been more pleased to be proven wrong," Harriet replied with uncharacteristic humility. "Your methods have helped half the county improve their household gardens. And these apples," she held up a perfectly formed fruit, "I wouldn't have believed they could grow here if I weren't holding the evidence." The sound of approaching horses interrupted their conversation. Griffin appeared, leading the ranch hands back from the day's work. He dismounted with the easy grace that still made Zara's heart skip, even after years of marriage. "Ladies," he greeted them, tipping his hat before scooping up his son, who ran to him with delighted squeals. "And how's my little cowboy today?" "Helping Mama with apples," James declared proudly. "He's been invaluable," Zara confirmed, accepting Griffin's kiss. Griffin surveyed the harvest with satisfaction. "Best crop yet, I'd say. That new irrigation system is paying off." After Harriet departed with a basket of apples and promises to return for the upcoming harvest celebration, the family gathered on their porch for the evening meal. The ranch hands ate at their own quarters, leaving the Blacketts to their private time together. As twilight descended, Griffin and Zara sat side by side on the porch swing, watching their children play with wooden blocks on the floor beside them. In the distance, the lights of Cottonwood Springs twinkled, the town having grown considerably in recent years. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is our life," Zara said softly. "Remember when they all called me hopeless?" Griffin chuckled, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "I remember, though I prefer to recall what I said to you instead." "We'll plant together," Zara quoted, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And look what grew from that simple promise." "A garden," Griffin said. "A family," Zara added. "A future," they finished together as the stars emerged one by one above their thriving homestead. A testament to hope made manifest through love and perseverance.